folks, the Mr. Flyer here, hope you're well. Now, for the last month or so, I've been riding this. This is the little Sinnis RSX125, and I've been lucky enough to be borrowing this long term. I've been able to kind of treat the bike as my own, as I say, for the last month or so. And I've ridden it in all sorts of conditions. I've ridden it in town, I've ridden it at night, and all kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to do in this review for the next few minutes is to let you know what it's actually like to live with the bike. So what's it like to maintain, what's the thing like at the fuel station, and so on. All the little bits and pieces that you wouldn't necessarily find out about the bike if you just rode it for a quick 1 hour test ride. And at the very end of the video, I'm going to give you a list of all the pros and cons that I found out about the bike. Not only the things that I like about the bike, but also the things that I found out that I don't like. So stick around and stay tuned, and I'll give you my living with review of the Sinnis RSX125.
So on country lanes, the little Sinnis RSX125 is a joy to ride. You don't need oodles of power when you're on little twisty roads, and this thing being so lightweight is just such a joy to chuck into corners. The tyres are a bit strange. They're a manufacturer I've never heard of. They're actually called something like, I can't remember what they're called, but they're obviously, well, I'm guessing they're some sort of Chinese tyre, so I'm not entirely sure how long they would last, but they don't have any lack of feel. I mean, I don't feel like they're going to slide out from under me or anything like that. There's plenty of grip in them. So yeah, country lanes absolutely fine. I guess, what about faster roads? Okay, when I talk about riding on faster roads, in the context of a 125, what I mean are roads like this, an A road as opposed to a motorway. Clearly, you're not, I would say, going to be taking a 125 onto a motorway. Although legally it can be done, I wouldn't recommend it because these bikes don't have an abundance of top-end power. So here I'm on the A413, which is the Aylesbury-London road, and let's get into top gear, and I'm at full throttle, and we're cruising along here at 56 miles an hour. 57, we've got a slight headwind. 58 is gradually going up, so I think, and it doesn't sound like the bike's particularly stressed, and we're up at about 7,500, 8,000 RPM. So I think cruising along at 60 on an A road is doable, but it hasn't got a great deal more than that. Here we go, look, I'm flat out on the throttle, and it seems to be sticking at 62, 63 miles an hour, so that's what it tops out at with a 12 stone rider on it, which is ample for sort of commuting and town work generally. But as I say, I wouldn't want to use it on a motorway, although in the inside lane you probably wouldn't be too much of a hazard. Trucks and stuff do sometimes go a bit faster than that, and you could become a bit of a problem to them, so I would avoid motorways with it. But you know, A roads, no problem. And the great news, of course, is you ain't going to be breaking any speed limits and falling foul of the law. Even though I was thrashing the engine there, and still am, in fact I've got it wide open again, it doesn't sound like the motor's under any great stress. And this little unit, the Suzuki copy, it's a licensed copy, these engines just run forever. Air-cooled singles just don't go wrong really, so I think the little engine will be pretty bulletproof even when you're thrashing it at top speeds. So here we are then on the Sinnis riding at night, and these cameras never do a good job of picking up what lighting is like on these bikes, so I don't expect it's doing it here. And I'd say on dip the light is adequate. It's not absolutely amazing, but I've ridden with worse, I have to say. It's I'm just trying to think what it compares with. It's better than my CRF, for example, my Honda, but it's not as good as any of my other bikes. But it's not bad. You can certainly see where you're going. These sort of side lights are just completely bizarre. I've never seen anything like this on a bike before. I don't know what's going on here. In that they're quite bright. So look, if I look down, you see these side lights on here. They're actually a bit distracting, if I'm honest. Although they do light up the sort of handlebars a little bit, so I guess you can see where your hands are, although you know where they are anyway. Let's go down this darker bit so we can really try the lights out and get shot of that car behind me. Okay, so here we are then. Let me move back on the seat. Now you can see, look, this is dip. These side lights are a little bit distracting if you're sitting quite back on the seat. But it's still quite groovy, I quite like them. And then the full beam, which is on the switch on the left handlebar, there we go, that's full beam. And that looks pretty good actually. That's as good as any bike I've ridden. That's absolutely fine. And then to flash the headlights, if I go back to dip, there's just a trigger at the front, which is what I like actually. You just press it and it flashes the lights. There's none of this funny business of it changing mode or anything. It's just a normal flasher. So back to full, and yeah, no problem at all. The switch gear isn't lit up at all, which most bikes aren't. I've only come across KTMs that do that, which is a bit of a shame. but you can't have everything. But I have to say, overall, the lighting on here is absolutely fine, and once again I find myself very, very impressed with the Sinnis. I really thought that you know, I wasn't going to like this bike very much. It was going to be cheap and nasty basically, but it's cheap but anything but nasty. And light at night time, absolutely no issues.
So we hear a lot, don't we, about Chinese bikes, about how rubbish they are, and you know, there's lots of myths and misinformation out there about Chinese-sourced motorcycles. And one of the reasons why I was keen to ride this was to find out for myself about the bike, and I've been very pleasantly surprised. I had very low expectations for this bike, and I have to say those expectations have been blown out of the water. And I'll give you my summary at the end of the video, but I thought it was just worth taking a little bit of time to tell you a little bit about Sinnis. So I've been talking to Michael Jarrett, who's their operations director there, and he gave me some background on the company, a little bit about their philosophy, and he sent it to me in an email, but I thought it was worth pretty much reading this out to you. So Mike is the operations director, as I say. He overlooks everything from marketing to sales and parts and warranty and dealer support, so he's kind of the boss. He says that they're a small team, they're always very busy, which is what they like. He insists that all the staff test Sinnis bikes at least once a month, which he feels keeps them producing great bikes, and then if there are any problems, it means that they can feed back to the factory and make sure that the bike quality keeps getting improved. Basically, I only employ staff who love to ride the bikes, is what he says. So that's got to be a good thing. So they're all enthusiasts, for number one. He says that he started business in 2006 and always had pride in the bikes and parts that we supply. We would rather they were higher quality and cost slightly more, but give more satisfaction than other imports, yet still fill the gap of the economy-conscious buyer, which is obviously what they're trying to do with this. They focus on 50cc and 125cc bikes, all under the £2,500 mark. The bikes come with 2-year dealer warranty at any of their 120 plus UK dealer networks, so a pretty massive dealer network as well. They've also apparently got a dealer in Gozo, Malta and Slovakia, just in case you happen to be there. They, as I mentioned before, they're trying to bring a better quality import from China, not just a cheap bike. We want to work with our customers. We want to provide a well-built and stable first bike or commuter bike. The way we differ is only to work from factories in China that have a well-branded associate partnership. Now, this is an important thing. The RSX, this bike, for example, is from a BMW Motorrad and Harley partner factory. We test the bikes ourselves in the UK before importing, and every bike my team tests then has a full test report. Any reasons for improvement and detailed breakdowns are discussed in meetings and then forwarded to the factories for any ongoing necessary improvements. Sinnis themselves are known mainly for their association with a factory in a city called Chinchi, that's the factory, and that's a Suzuki partner, or was a Suzuki partner for many years, and as such they only use the Suzuki licensed engines in their Apache 125 Supermoto and their other models. They're very lucky to be the only people authorised to do this, something that they've worked hard to attain and are justifiably proud of, so that's great. In 2017, January this year, we also won the Motorcycle Franchise of the Year award. We beat Honda, Kawasaki and etc, and as it was voted for by 2,000 dealers around the country, this is something we're very happy with, considering that they are such a small team. What they pride themselves on are customer support, build quality and listening to feedback and ongoing improvements. So I just thought, I mean, it sounds a bit like a sales blurb, and I guess to some degree it is, but I thought it was interesting just to give you a bit of background about what Sinnis in the UK are all about.
So the little RSX125 has finally pretty much run out of fuel since I've had it, and this is the first time actually that I've been to a fuel station on it. The light hasn't come on to say I'm running low on fuel yet, but on the fuel indicator I've just got 1 bar left, so I thought I'd go and top her up, give her a try, see if there's any surprise at the fuel station. Just in case there were, I've tried to get the fuel cap off before I left home, and it was a bit of a faff, so let's see how I get on actually at the station. There's a bit of a technique to it, I think. But this bike, I mean, it's a 125, so it's just super frugal. And I'll get as much as I can in, and if I manage to use another tank full during the time that I've got it, I might be able to work out a miles per gallon figure. Now, is this one open, is the question. Yeah, it looks like it is. Alright, let's get some fuel on board then. Right, so easy to get neutral on this. Right, now, as I say, this was a little bit of a faff before at home. It's one of those ones that you sort of, getting it off is okay, it's getting it back on again that was the issue. Right, it comes straight off. I shall fill her up, go and pay, and then we'll see what she's like getting her back on again. Right, I'm not going to get any more in there. So that was from pretty much empty to pretty much full. 14 pounds and 12.1 litres I got in. Okay, here we go. So this really is just to get it on flat and push it, and it should click into place. Let's see if it works this time. Not really. Okay, let's try again. It says front that way, perhaps that's where I was going wrong. And actually that was fine that time, easy peasy, no problem at all. Don't know what I was worried about. No worries. Right, better go and pay. Sunday is obviously the time to come to the petrol station. Used to queuing up round here for fuel. It's great that I haven't had to. Right, let's see if the Chinese have their fuel tanks such that they detect that you've got full fuel pretty much immediately. Let's see. Okay, stand up. Well, it's going up already, look. There we go, it's gone right full before I've even started the engine. And you know, I've ridden plenty of tramps where they don't actually register anything until you've ridden for a quarter of a mile. So there's nothing wrong with the fuel tank. So there we go, I was actually expecting a bit of drama and a bit of difficulty getting the fuel cap back on based on when I tried it at home. But actually there was no problem at all. Now it's loosened up a bit, you just push it on and it clicks out, no problem at all. No issue at all in the fuel station, and the fuel gauge has immediately registered that I've got full fuel. I think I'll just reset the trip so we can see what we get out of that. So as I say, I'm expecting this bike to be extremely frugal. I don't know whether I will actually use a complete tank and fill her up completely again whilst I've got it. Hopefully I will, and then I can work out a miles per gallon figure for how she's doing.
So there can be no doubt that one of the big sales features of the Sinnis 125 is the fact that the bike is very reasonably priced. £2,200 on the road pretty much, which is absolutely remarkable when you compare it to the competition. But of course, owning a bike isn't just about how much it costs to start with. What's the overall sort of cost of ownership? Well, I've done a bit of digging around to find out how much one of these things would cost you if you kept it for a year. So I've made some notes here. So first off, road tax, which is what we have here in the UK. Because it's below 150cc, road tax is just £18 a year on this bike, so as cheap as you can get for a motor vehicle. Servicing costs, well, that very much depends on where you take it and the hourly charge that the dealer or engineer actually charges you. But I've had a chat to Sinnis about that, and they say that you can expect less than £85 for a service on this, so pretty reasonable, I reckon. And in terms of service intervals, it has to have the first service at 1,000 kilometres or 600 miles. That's the same as pretty much any bike. And then it's every 2,000 kilometres after that, so every 1,200 miles after that. So a little bit more often than you would normally expect. Often bikes are something like 6,000 miles. This one's going to be every 1,200 miles. But given it's not a bike that's likely to be doing long distances, that should be okay. And then the next big cost, of course, with the bike is insurance. So I spoke to my friends at Principal Insurance and got them to give me a quote for this bike based on my risk profile. And according to Principal, the rate for the Sinnis is absolutely an amazing £82.88 per year. So £82.88 to insure this bike on the road if you were me. Now I'm 49 years old, I live in a relatively nice area, I've got the bike in a lock garage and so on. So of course it depends on your personal risk profile, but as an indicative thing, it's pretty cheap to insure as well. So when you add that together, excluding fuel, this is going to cost you less than £200 a year to run. Now I think that's pretty decent cost of ownership in anyone's book.
What about pillions on the little 125? Well, again, it's not an engine, as we know, with an abundance of power, so it's not a sort of bike I'll be putting heavy pillions on, but it's certainly kitted out for pillions. I'm just going to stop here and show you what the bike has on it in terms of seat, etc. I mean, it's very comfortable, the seat on here, as I said before, and it's got plenty of room on the back for a pillion, and it's got these grab handles, so I think a pillion would feel pretty safe. It's got these pegs here which are nicely finished, so certainly there's a sort of occasional thing. If you've got a lightweight girlfriend or something that you want to pop on the back, then there's no reason why you couldn't do that occasionally. I've not taken a pillion on it, because obviously it's not something you're going to want to do a lot of on a very low powered bike. But as I say, it's a once in a while thing. No reason why you can't take a pillion on the little Sinnis. So what about some of the practical points of living with the little Sinnis RSX125. What about if you want to do maintenance or you want to move the thing around a bit? How hard is that? So let me just find somewhere to stop. Let's go in the car park up here, and I'll just show you some interesting stuff on that subject. So if we come over here, I'll just stick the bike here. Right. Okay, actually I'm going to take the helmet off, I think, with this.
Right, so what's the bike like to lug about on your driveway, things like that then? Well, of course, it's only 140 something kilograms, so it's very, very light. One of the great things that they've done with the bike as well is they have these massive great grab handles on the back that feel really solid. They're not plastic or anything, so you've got something to grab hold of the bike with, so that's great. So moving it around, this is actually sort of a semi-gravel car park, really quite easy. So I'll just lift it up and move it around just to demonstrate, but it is very easy. The thing is literally like moving a bicycle, so it's an absolute piece of cake to move around if you're on a gravel driver or anywhere else, car park, whatever. Not a problem if you're a bit of a weakling or a smaller person or a female, you can move this bike no problem. It's great in that respect with the grab handles, etc. And then the other thing is, from a maintenance point of view, something that Sinnis have done that not many bike manufacturers do, which I think is a great thing on here, is they've actually included a centre stand. Let me show you that. Down here, look. They've actually got a centre stand, so when it comes to maintenance, oiling the chain or pumping the tyres, you can get the bike up on the stand and you haven't got any issues. You don't have to roll it around to try and oil the chain in segments. So real good move that, I think, from Sinnis. The other thing is when you've got the bike on the centre stand, I'll stick it on there in a minute, you can actually run the engine, whereas you can't do that when it's on the side stand. So again, might be useful from a maintenance point of view.
Okay, what about touring on the RSX125? Well, again, 125s aren't the sort of classic bike that you would think about going touring on necessarily, but there's no reason why you couldn't. I've know that there are people that have been around the world on Honda C90s, for example, so there's no reason why you couldn't do a around the world trip on one of these things if you so wanted. As I mentioned before, I thoroughly expect the engine to be very reliable. I guess the drawback is the lack of power, so if you're very loaded up, yeah, you might notice an impact on the performance of the bike. And then of course things like availability of luggage. As far as I'm aware, there isn't a luggage pack available for this, although I'm sure you can get third-party panniers and so on that would fit it, and indeed top boxes, or with minimal modification you could get those fitted. But so yeah, you could, I mean, technically yes, you could tour on it. It's very comfortable. The riding position is super comfortable. It's all day long comfortable in that respect, and certainly you'd go a long way between fuel stops. It's just a matter of how would you carry your luggage, I think. And also you wouldn't be covering big miles on autobahns and motorways because you just haven't got the top speed to keep up with fast traffic. So I guess where bikes like the RSX125 are going to spend most of their time is in the urban environment around town, and they are absolutely ideal for this sort of work. In amongst traffic, really light. If you need to filter, then you can do, no problem at all. It's nice and narrow. Get your feet up flat on the deck. Doesn't feel like you're going to drop it at any point. You can nip round and by traffic as you wish, and because you're sitting nice and upright, you've got a good view of the traffic ahead as well. So absolutely perfect for the urban environment. If you've got a toss up between, you know, catching a bus every day or getting a train, maybe say 10 miles into town, or getting yourself one of these for the same price per year, then for me it's absolutely no contest. These little bikes at £2 grand, so much more fun than catching a train or a bus, and I bet you not much more cost over the year.
So I promised you at the start of the video a summary at the end of the pros and cons of the bike. Now I've got to know the machine quite well. So I've been making lists as I've been going along over the last month, and in traditional fashion I'll start with the negatives first before we move on to the positives. So again, I have to say, just to bracket this list of negatives, I've struggled actually to find quite a lot not to like about the bike. Overall I really like the machine, but there are one or two little things that have struck me as maybe could be improved. So first off, the idiot lights here on the binnacle can be difficult to see if there's light behind you. It doesn't have to be particularly bright light, but it's actually with some glare behind you, you can't even see if the indicator light is flashing or not. So small point, but it's just something that annoyed me a little bit when I initially rode it. The fuel cap. When you first try and remove it to fill her up, it can be a bit of a faff, it has to be said. Now I've done it a few times, it's actually easy and I'm used to it, but to start with, that was a bit of a faff, but now it's fine. Next thing, the indicator switch. It can be a little bit sticky. It's not the highest quality item, it has to be said, and I find that you have to press it quite hard to make sure you've cancelled the indicator. It's fine putting them on, but cancelling them you have to press it quite positively, so that's one little thing that maybe could be improved. ABS. Now it's a good thing that the bike has ABS, but it is only single channel, i.e. only acting on the front wheel, which means if you give the back wheel a footfall, you can lock the back wheel up and skid it, which I did do a few times when I first started riding the bike. Once you're used to it, you don't do that anymore, but just something to be aware of, that it is possible to lock the back wheel up, particularly on such a light bike. Another thing I'm not too keen on, this is more me than a real issue, the engine won't run if you've got the side stand down, even if the bike is in neutral. Now if that really did annoy you, I mean, I'm sure it's pretty easy to defeat. There's probably just a micro switch in the stand that you could just disconnect, but that's something that other bikes don't tend to do. I saw it on the Royal Enfields, they do that, and it would just annoy me if I can't put the bike on the side stand and leave it running to warm it up first thing in, first ride of the day, particularly in winter. So again, small point. Another minor niggle, no temperature gauge. It's an air-cooled bike. They don't tend to have temperature gauges, to be fair. But I like to see a temperature gauge. I just like to know that the bike's not running too hot. So again, small point. And I guess the only other thing with it is it remains to be seen, of course, on the long-term reliability and longevity of the fit and finish of the bike. I mean, it seems fine to me, and I imagine this Suzuki licensed engine is absolutely bulletproof. But without actually riding it through a couple of British winters over a couple of years, I can't really comment on how it would stand up to that. And then the only other negative thing is something that sadly there's not much we can do about, is kind of credibility. For some people, for some reason, people go on about Chinese builds, don't they? And they don't treat them as proper bikes and so on. But I think we ignore the Chinese at our peril, and that's other people's problem, not your problem as a rider of the bike. So that was it for the negatives. What about the positives? So plenty of positives on the bike as well. First off, the main thing, of course, has to be the price. I mentioned it earlier. It's actually £2,150 is the price of the bike, and then a £55 registration fee. So 2205 on the road. Unbelievably good value for money. And also with such frugal running costs of less than £200 a year, I mean, the thing is just cheap to run. So positive price. Frugal to run, I've already mentioned that. It's well equipped given the price. I mean, the fact that it does have ABS, I think is amazing. It's got upside down forks, for goodness sake, on the front of the bike. It's got LED lights that I think look really cool. It's got a centre stand as standard, something that many more established manufacturers, mainstream manufacturers, certainly don't do. They're often optional extras, and that's really handy from a maintenance point of view. I think that's good. I think the overall styling of the bike, I think the thing actually looks good. It does remind me a bit of a Suzuki Inazuma in some sort of way. It's certainly got that sort of modern Transformer-esque look about it, and I think the look of the bike, is really nice. I think they've done a good job on the design. Build quality. I actually think the build quality on this is really nice. There's nothing about it that shouts cheap and nasty, except maybe that indicator switch that I've already talked about. But that's the only thing really. Everything else seems really well made. The finishes are nice. Even things like these mirrors, I've checked, these are absolutely identical to the mirrors on my BMW GS, and as this is made in a BMW partner factory, I suspect they come from the same parts bin. So, the build quality, as far as I'm concerned, is excellent on this bike. I like the fact it comes with a 24-month warranty as well. I think that speaks volumes about what Sinnis think about the product. So that's a plus point. And then last but not least, just the ride quality and handling on it. Because it's such a light bike, it handles really nicely. Now, I've ridden a few bikes from the cheaper end of the market over the last year or two, and they don't all handle that great, I have to say. But this thing doesn't handle any worse than any other mainstream manufacturer bike. In fact, if you told me this was a Yamaha and I was blindfolded, I'd think it was. It's perfectly good in terms of its ride quality and handling. So in summary then, it'll be no surprise to you to learn that I've been super impressed by the bike. I had very low expectations, as I said, when I came into the bike, and now having ridden the bike for the last 5 or 6 weeks, you know, I've come away really, really impressed with it. I'm amazed that they can actually make the bike at a profit for that price. It really is a nice little machine. Now, I haven't ridden a new premium brand, if you like, 125 for many years since I learnt to ride, and I learnt to ride on a YB125, the little Yamaha. And I have to say, this is at least as good, if not better, than the Yamaha 125 that I used to ride. Now, I have to bracket that because I haven't ridden the modern day one. But this, as far as I'm concerned, is a great little 125cc machine. If you need a commuter, if you need a first bike, you just need something to get you to work if you live relatively locally, then you can go a lot worse than getting the Sinnis 125. And I've been so impressed, in fact, I've asked Sinnis if I could borrow some more of their bikes for long-term review. So there we have it. I hope that's been of some interest to you, and I look forward to speaking to you next time. Until then, this has been the Mr. Flyer. Cheerio.